Welcome back, everyone, to our quick study overview guide of the New Testament. We're in the book of Mark, chapter 11. We have Jesus at Bethpage in Bethany near the Mount of Olives. And if you were ever there, I haven't been there, but if you were ever there, and you could look up pictures on the internet, but you can see the entire temple from this place. And the Mount of Olives, as you're sitting there, you're kind of at a higher elevation to the east, and you could see the temple. You could see, basically all of Jerusalem and the city of David towards the south, and that's where they're starting off. And he's sending some messengers. In the Greek, he actually calls them messengers or angeloi, but he sends them down into the town and says, go get a colt and untie it. And if anyone asks you, just say the Lord has need of it. And this starts the procession. This procession basically is a recreation of Jeremiah's, by King David's, ceremony. They put themselves on a throne. Now, they were overthrown, and for a long time they didn't have anyone in the line of David on the throne. But this is Jesus, basically, you could say fulfilled. A lot of people agree or disagree. We won't get into it, but here Jesus, more than likely, symbolically and in reality, but it's more symbolic. It's a symbolic reality that there is a king of the line of David back on the throne. And they put, if you'll notice, leafy branches. It's not necessarily palm trees, but palm trees work. But they took leafy branches and they cried out, Hosanna. These are Old Reference Testament. Blessed is the coming kingdom. It's coming. Of our Father David. Hosanna in the highest. I want you to notice something that they don't really include in the other accounts. After this ceremony, Jesus actually goes into the temple and just looks around. And then he left. He went back to Bethany. Now, in other accounts, he goes straight from the ceremony into the temple. But here, they go back. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. We have the famous part of the fig tree. He saw it was leaf, but there was no fruit from it. And he said, no one ever will eat fruit from you again. A lot of people look at Israel as symbolic in a way that they're trying to support their view of a future time, and they have to really mess with these meanings. And to set the record straight, what's being said here, and it ties into everything else of what Jesus is saying. Like if you go back in Matthew, he's just saying, look, I'm here now, I'm going away, but I'm going to come back in your lifetime, and you need to be on the lookout. You can discern things. You can discern the season by what the trees are doing. Are they budding? Are they flowering? So you know that summer's coming, right? He's giving these analogies. And honestly, if someone told me the horror that was going to happen inside of Jerusalem, I wouldn't be there. But apparently there are people that are there at the time of the coming of Christ, around 70 AD, when the sign of the Son of Man, is Noah's Ark. In Lot's time, like in Luke, he talks about Lot being told he needs to leave. But here, in this scenario, Jesus is saying, look, when you see this sign, you need to run. In these analogies where you need to be on the lookout, you need to be able to discern what's happening. You need to be able to discern the sign of the times. The sign of the Son of Man when this abomination of desolation, which turns out to be the Roman army, according to Luke, you need to run. This is your ark. This is your information. This is what's going to get you out. And you have to be able to see that. But this is not that. This is just saying Israel was given what they were given by God, let's just say, and they didn't produce any fruit. They're not producing anything. So no one will ever eat fruit from you again. Is basically what he's saying. And then later on, the tree withers. But the other aspect to it that people think is now is actually not future, but past. Again, Jesus just saying, look, be on the lookout because I'm coming back. And that's all. And you also have to take into account that the 4 people that were there, which we'll get into, it's actually in chapter 13, there's 4 people there. By the time Jesus came back, that's a whole nother topic right there, Jesus coming back. It's actually God coming, but Jesus is a part of it, naturally. At this time of their life, they could have children or about ready to have children. The 4 that are asking all this stuff and being told everything by Jesus, the Olivet account, the Olivet apocalypse. They could have children. 20 years later, they could have grandchildren. And then another 20 years, around the time of the coming and the destruction of the temple, they could have a great-grandchild. So that's 1, 2, 3 generations, including him. So that's 4 generations altogether. So you could look at it that way for future generations, this generation, but that generation will still be there. His son's generation will be there, his grandson's generation. And if he had a great-grandson or granddaughter, great-grandchild, they'd probably be very, very young, but they'd still have a generation. It would be a part of it. So you would have 4 generations that would see these things. But keeping an account, that generation, his generation, the 4 that are sitting there, are still there. Keep that in mind. And so they leave, but then they come back. Now, this is the part where Jesus clears out the temple. Now, a lot of people say this is impossible because there's probably 1 million people there. I mean, there's a ton of people there. Let's just say 500,000 people in this confined area. And he overturned the tables and he took them all out. Basically, what this is saying is it's an Old Testament reference to he's putting the house in order. There's all these traditions. There's all these things going on. This is a house of God. This is a house of worship, not a place to make money and take advantage of people. And that's what he's doing. He's basically cleansing the temple, if you will. He's driving them out. Okay, he made it a den of robbers. Now later on, he just says, "I'll leave your temple to you desolate" when he leaves. But it seems like he's trying to make an example and tell everyone, "Hey, look, this is what it's really supposed to be. Here's an example, again, a physical example that we get to hear about thousands of years later." And, we do this in our churches all the time, doing the same thing over and over again. We never listen and we never learn. But he left the city after cleansing it. And then they saw the tree that you cursed had withered from earlier. And Jesus says, "Have faith in God. Truly I say to you, whoever says this mountain be taken up and cast in the sea, and does not doubt in your heart, but believes what he says is going to happen, it will be granted to him. Therefore I say to you, all things for which you pray and ask, believe that you will have received them, and they will be granted to you." Whenever you stand praying, forgive if you have anything against anyone, so that your Father who is in heaven will also forgive you for your transgressions. You don't pray to people in judgment and say, "This guy cut me off the other day and he flipped me off. And I know that guy, he's supposed to be a Christian. So I'm praying for him." You should never judge anyone. You don't get to judge anyone. So how could you go to God and ask for forgiveness for someone else you never judged? Right? Forgive if you have anything against anyone. That's for you. Not to forgive them, but to forgive the thought that you judge them. You're the one that transgressed by judging someone. You're asking God to forgive you for judging someone else. What they do is their problem. Do you understand that? And then they added it. A lot of times this right here in 26, it's an example, and it's happened before, very recently, a couple hundred years, but this is when an opinion, a margin note, becomes scripture, and that's kind of what they're indicating here. That in this NASB's opinion, that part was added in. It used to be a marginal note that became scripture. It's the right idea, but probably not from the original manuscript. They came again to Jerusalem, so they left again, and then they came back again. Asterisk. That's the conclusion they're drawing, right? Just so you know. I have a question for you, because they're asking him. It's not quite his time yet, because they're asking something, so he has to kind of turn it around on them. And he's very slippery, Jesus. He can get out of it. And he knows enough to be able to do it. And I will ask you by what authority I do these things. And he asks them about John. And they were perplexed, and he says, nor will I tell you the authority. So he's kind of slipping out of his cuffs again. Not quite time yet. Okay? Then we'll get into chapter 12.